Today, I thought I'd start by telling a little bit about how to teach struggling readers if they're not getting um, the words, just understanding the sounds. For example, if they're doing an online program or something, and they can say that the letters CAT say k, a, t, but when they go to put it together, they might say gal. And this can be a working memory issue. It can be a number of things, but really, what I think is effective, that I've seen be effective, is to teach them that all the letters say their sound, really work on sounds of the letters constantly, even when you start reading, even when you start introducing words, go back and have them point to the letters and tell you what sound they make, right? You skip around and point to some of them. They don't have to do all every time. All right, let me share with you my desk. Jiminy, it's a mess. Okay, so here we have the word at. This is not a sight word. This is a word we can sound out. Most sight words are actually words that we can sound out if we know the rules, right? Okay, so here we go. I'm going to teach at. Okay, what sound does this make? At. At. And then they're going to be like, okay, at. Cool. And now I'm going to add one letter to the front. So what does this say again? That's right, at. Let's add one letter to the front. What sound does this make? B, at, bat. Okay. The first time you do it until they get the roll of how this works. So now we're only going to change one letter. So that way they still know this, right? You take it away. This says at, right? What does this letter say? At, at, rat. Okay. This letter, at, hat. Make sure you're clipping the sounds with the consonants. We don't want to say buh. In fact, correct that every time they say buh for the letter B, go, wait, it's buh. So then they say buh, because once you try to put a B that says buh in front of an at, it's buh at. And we don't want that. That's not how we say it. So make sure you're not saying puh for P. Instead, it's p. Lots of letters don't actually have voicing behind them. So make sure that you're saying it right and that they're clipping off the end. Okay, we're going to keep going through these. Bat. And eventually they're really going to understand what's going on. They're going to remember at, that, at, pat. Now, you want to say, these are nonsense words. They're not real words. So just tell me, based on their sounds, what they say. What does this sound say? G, at, gat. Not a real word. So make sure they know these are called nonsense words, right? But it's just good practice. Y, at, yet. T, at, tat. Okay. So you can do that with any ending that the vowel says the sound that it should and the consonant says the sound that it should. We do not want to use things like a, because a at this point, when they're just learning to read, should say ah. Until we teach an open syllable concept, it should say ah. Speaking of syllables, what kind of syllable is this? If it only has one vowel and it ends in a consonant, it can end in multiple consonants, but it can only have one vowel. It is a closed syllable. In closed syllables, in the beginning, when we're teaching this, in closed syllables, the vowel says its sound, not its name. So that means that you want to make sure when you go through and try to find an ending or a beginning that you're going to add endings to, that you make sure they say the correct vowel sound. for example, and I will say start with A. It's much easier than E because E and I, sound a little the same. Okay, so once A is conquered, we can move on to E. Et, b, et, bet. Et, p, et, pet. So we want them to know that these are two distinct sounds. But once we figure those out, once we're like, okay, we know ET says et, then all we're changing is one word or one letter, excuse me. Now let's do some nonsense words. Et, het. Et, fet. Y, et, yet. G, et, get. And obviously I'm moving through it fast, but I do this fast. I explain to my students that we're just going to go through this quick. So the secret is to remember what these two say. So when we switch the beginning, the end says the same thing. And this has worked really well for me. I recommend you try it with different combinations. Only in the beginning, we do not do anything that teaches outside of a closed syllable. And the reason for that is because we need to start, and research shows we have to start easy and build up harder, right? So the easiest syllable there is a closed syllable. Talk about the fact that it's a closed syllable because it has one vowel and it ends in a consonant. All right. The other thing I was going to show you today that I use is this book. Is a book by David Kilpatrick. Yep. And it's Equipped for Reading Success. These are activities that you can do in the car, you can do at the breakfast table, and they're called 1-minute activities. So in the beginning of this book, you'll see there's just all this. There, it's pretty. This is teaching. This is how you should understand. He's teaching the parent how to understand, or the teacher how to understand phonemes, how to understand manipulating them, which we know now that a lack of phonetic and phoneme understanding and the ability to play with those within a word really is a defining characteristic of kids with dyslexia. So what we want to do is we want to practice this. You do this even pre-reading, before they can read. You're going to say, and what I love about this book is it gives you an example. Say birthday. Oops, sorry. Now say birthday, but don't say birth. The answer is day. Okay. You have to show a couple of these. So we're going to do it one more time. Birthday. Now say it again, but don't say birth. Day. Okay. So here's how this sounds when I'm working with a kiddo. I'm like, I'm going to give you a word that has two parts. We're going to separate those parts. Okay. So if I said the word birthday, say birthday, have them repeat it. They say birthday. Now, what word is that if you take away birth? They literally might not be able to do this in the beginning. And so there's going to be some understanding of you're going to be doing it with them for a little bit. So let's do this one together. Daytime. What word is left if you take away day? Time. Eyesight. What? Say it again, but don't say eye. The answer is sight. Football. Make sure they say it. Football. Say it again, but don't say ball. Foot. Ball. Disk drive. Oh man, this is kind of old language. Kids are not going to know what this is. Bedtime. They say bedtime. Say it again, but don't say bed. And they're going to think about it for a second and they'll go time. Another helpful thing for this, if they're really not getting it, is to clap. So I'm going to say bedtime. I'm going to say bedtime. Now let's clap the word bedtime. Okay, now take away the portion that says bed. Say it again, but don't say bed. They'll think time. You can even say clap twice, but don't say the first part, right? because if we add a physical action in there, it makes it easier to remember. Okay, so those are two ideas. This book is sold on Amazon, and as you go through, it gets harder and harder. So let's turn a little bit. Okay, say would. Now say would. Now say it again, but instead of W, that is so wrong. If you see a slant like this next to a letter, it means say the sound, don't say the letter. Okay, say would. Now instead of w, say g, good. Now we're using manipulation, right? Before we were using deletion. Manipulation is harder, and the idea of changing the letters is a little harder. So you want to work through, once again, systematic, from easy to hard. We do not want to jump right in the middle and be like, okay, he doesn't like doing that, so let's go ahead and do this. This will be so much harder if you don't do the beginning. If you don't do the beginning syllables, you can work fast through it. If they get it fast, you absolutely don't have to do every word on the page, right? If they start getting it fast, just go down and do 2 words on each section. Make sure they've got it. We don't want to belabor it, but we want to give them enough time to learn it. Okay, those are 2 hints at helping kids that are struggling to blend words together using the Equip for Reading Success book, or the same idea in another book, right? And using the key of sounding out a portion of the word, right? Like at, and then leaving that portion the same and just introduce the first letter. And you can reverse it and have the first letter be the same, but you want to keep that vowel, the thing that stays the same. So they're consistently saying the same vowel sound. Make sure they're looking at it as they say it. Make sure they're saying it out loud. We want to engage as many senses as possible. All right, that's it for now. Thanks.